You may have found yourself in the situation where you want to take a fairly small piece of wood and rip it through the bandsaw. And when you do that, you have to apply pressure against the fence and from the back through the blade, and you have to continue to put pressure against the fence. Sometimes you can use a push stick to help you out. Take a look at this little contraption that I came up with to try and help me out in situations like this. Here is a do-it-yourself solution to this problem with skateboard wheels on a spring-loaded, totally maneuverable apparatus, keeping your fingers safe. You're probably wondering, why do I need this spring here? Why can't I just take and jam the wheels up against the wood and have it work? Well, take a look at the contour here, the edge. Now with this spring, it will adjust and move with the contour with continual pressure as the cut is made. Take a look now. I'll set it right at the lowest point, tighten it up, and then I'll slide it so each wheel is on each side of the blade, giving continuous pressure. If you want to see how I made this, join me and I'll show you all that's involved. These are the basic materials that I used for this project. I had a block of scrap teak, and you could probably use any other kind of wood, but this is 1 3/4 by 4 by 4, and 2 wing nuts, 3/8 inch wing nuts, a rod of 3/8 inch material. This is an aluminum pipe that has an interior diameter that will accept this 3/8 inch. You can use a lot of other things for spacers, and I used a 3/4 inch dowel. The other thing you're going to need is some old skateboard trucks with wheels on them. I would suggest going to a Goodwill store and buying the least expensive kind you can get. This one here has a plastic material here rather than some have aluminum. And you can easily cut through this with a hacksaw. And that's what I did. I hacksawed right through this and got through into the axle. I'm sorry I don't have a step-by-step how to make this. I did, and it wasn't working right, so I deleted it all. But for those of you that are a little bit more advanced, I'll kind of explain the process of making this. So you see I have this kind of movement in here, and I needed that. To get into it, I'm going to take these wing nuts off. I'm just going to dissect this for you right now. And I put these little washers over these aluminum sleeves. And these aluminum sleeves, all they do is lift up the tightening point so I can not crash into this dome. So I'll go ahead and take this apart. I'll go ahead and pull these bottom washers off. And as I get those off, I'm going to lift this structure off. And I'll first tell you how I did this. I cut a small piece of wood. This is about 1/4 inch thick. And on the flip side of it, this was the hardest thing to do. You can see that I ripped with my table saw a thin piece of material, and I had to play around with it enough to where that thin piece of material fit inside the bottom slot in the steel tabletop. The top piece of material fit into the top slot. So when this is in there, this bottom piece is what's actually locking it into the table. And then you can see I put woodworker's glue in here, and I countersank holes, and I drilled into there. And then I went ahead and put screws into there. So this is all glued and screwed together. And I tested it to make sure it had good movement in the table gap. On this flip side, I measured in, pretty much centered it, and then I drilled 3/8 inch holes in here. I cut the threaded rod to size, and after I did that, then I put a little epoxy glue on the threads and pushed them down into the holes to make them rigid in there. So that's the bottom structure. So to make the top structure, I had this block of wood and I ran it through the saw and cut it down to where it was 4 by 4. And after I did that, I took a 3/4 inch drill bit and drilled it back and forth until I was able to get down all the way and pop it out the other side. Now you may want to go a little bit bigger than the 3/4, because the problem you may run into if you put a 3/4 inch dowel into a 3/4 inch hole, it's not going to slide loosely in there. So you either have to go slightly bigger on the hole, or you're going to have to make the dowel slightly smaller, and that's what I did. So after you've drilled your hole in there, then I took the bandsaw and I pretty much notched out a piece here, and I notched out another piece here, and then I was left with this square piece here, and I just slapped a large washer on here and I traced a circle, and you can see there's my circle, and then with the bandsaw standing upright I cut this circle around here, and it was easier than I thought. After that I drilled holes on the two sides here. These are 3/8 inch holes. I took a ruler and drew a line from the edge of that hole down to the edge of this hole on both sides, and I put it in my scroll saw and cut these parallels out, and that piece popped out on both sides. So that wasn't too bad. After that, I had to make the track for the skateboard. Now to make this for the skateboard, I just drew on a piece of paper this little Y shape, and I folded the paper in half and then cut out half of the pattern, and then when I opened it I got pretty much of a butterfly effect there. I drilled holes in here to the size of this axle, and that will depend on the skateboard you rip apart. And then again, after I jammed these in there, I put a little bit of super glue and it kind of dripped down in there and it kind of locks it in. Now to show you what I did with this dowel, I took the 3/4 inch dowel and I spun it on my lathe, and I made it slightly smaller diameter so it would slide in the hole and I could get a spring that would slide on it. If I turn this around, you can see the underside here. I stopped making it more narrow right there, and then if I turn this over, you can see I cut a notch right there out of the end of the dowel with my bandsaw, and when we flip it over you can see I pilot holed first and then countersunk and put some woodworker's glue in there and screwed and glued again. So I have this. Now in the back side here you can see I have a little eyelet, and you might wonder why is that there. And I have to have some way to keep this thing from flying out and falling out of the entire mechanism, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that. I found this little brass, and so I'm just putting a loop in here like this, and then after I get the loop in there I'm taking this and crushing it with a hammer, so I can then take it and put it over the top of these bolts. That's pretty much how the thing is made. Now this isn't probably the only and best way to make this, but I hope it gives your mind an idea of how you might make something like this. You can have some fun, and it can be very utilitarian, and maybe save the tips of your fingers at the same time.